This is 10,000 Hours of Indie, and more specifically the 80 Bands Around the World project. I've set myself the task of seeing 80 independent bands from around the world. There's no time limit, but I can only see one band or artist from each country, and I can't put money into the pocket of Ticketmaster. Simple, right? Well, I'm also based in Finland, which makes it tougher, so I'll need help from any touring bands that come through or event organisers that can help get me to my total of 80. Give me a follow on socials and get in touch if you can help. Links are in the show description. For this special double episode of the 80 Bands Around the World project, I visited Tallinn Music Week. This was my third visit to the Showcase Festival, but this time my aims were vastly different to previous trips. I was going to see bands because of where they were from, and not because they were in a certain genre. At times this was less than ideal, as I visited the festival with friends, but they didn't have to attend what I suggested, did they? Okay, so this episode is part one of my Tallinn Music Week trip. I managed to catch up with several bands for the project, so I'll talk about each separately due to the fact I didn't interview them in the same order that I saw them. It was a bit confusing, let's be honest. So I had an early bird ticket for Tallinn Music Week, so it cost under €50 for an entire weekend of new music. My idea of heaven when it's a 2.5-hour boat ride from Helsinki. So, let's begin. Merry. Her genre is alternative indie pop and rock. Merry's show was on Friday evening in Club of Different Rooms. It's a slightly different venue to the others, as it's almost like a living room feel, with standing room at the front and sofas and chairs at the back of the space. Also, you have to take your shoes off and wear the slippers provided when you enter, something one of my travelling companions was most unhappy about, and quite verbal about it too, but never mind. Merry play as a 5-piece band, and the energy from the moment they grace the stage is obvious. These are angsty songs about heartbreak and self-image wrapped in a pop-rock package. The space is filled by much running about and dancing, and the vocals are spot-on despite this. I very much enjoyed this set. The band was tight, and the performance was engrossing. I spoke to Merry online before the festival, and this is what she had to say. Can you introduce yourself and what you do in under a minute?
My name is Mary, and I am a singer-songwriter and artist from Denmark. I write songs on my guitar, and I produce a bit, and I love playing live. I work a lot with contrasts, and I work a lot with drama and theatricality in music. But I would sort of say that the music I make is dark rock, sweet pop music.
Okay, so what are your influences?
Musically speaking, I think from a young age, I've listened to a lot of rock music, a lot of grunge, and like a lot of like the pop rock and stuff like that. It has influenced me a lot growing up. I love Janis Joplin and I love the Savage Rose and like a lot of like these female singers and songwriters who had like a lot of power. I think have influenced me a lot growing up. Currently, it's a lot sort of more electronic and like female producers that sort of influence me a lot. I'm really into this artist called Sia Gray, and I'm really like into sort of people who mix like organic sounding instruments and riffs with like electronic production and stuff like that.
Tallinn Music Week. I'm speaking to you before Tallinn Music Week. Have you played in Estonia before?
No, never. And I've never been to Estonia, so it's going to be really exciting.
What are you expecting from the crowd at the festival?
It's always sort of mysterious what to like expect at these things. We've played before at showcase festivals abroad, and I think that I just hope that there will be people, and I hope that there will be people with open ears. I feel like that's what these sort of festivals are for. You know, you're listening to a band that you've never heard of from a country that you've probably never been to, and yeah, usually there's just a lot of music lovers, and I hope to meet some of those.
If you could recommend one of your tracks to a new listener, what would be the track they should start with?
I think that a personal favorite of mine is the track called Butterfly Breeder. I think it both has sort of the emotional depth that I want to convey. It has the emotion and feeling, but it also has the fun and play of like, it has the contrasts, and both the sound and sort of soundscape has the contrasting as well.
So what is the most rock and roll thing you have ever done as a musician?
When I was younger, I think a lot of the times I would play shows and would get like really sweaty, and I would really like go into it and jump and dance and just like really just like immerse myself into it. And like I've never really been in the greatest shape, so oftentimes a show when I was younger would end up in me and the band bowing down, me puking a little bit in my mouth and having to swallow it and get up again. And honestly, it's happened a lot.
Can you recommend another band or artist from Denmark that we should check out?
I can recommend a lot. I think currently I listen a lot to this band called Velvy, spelled Velvy, and listen a lot to Brimheim, and I listened a lot to Vilma Crow. There are like three acts that I really dig at the moment.
And finally, what is the best way for people to find out more about your music?
I think my Instagram is probably the place where you can find most of the stuff I do. I feel like that is my playground.
So the next band up are JATHB. They are an avant-garde dark wave electronic folk act. That's a lot of genres, but you'll understand why in a little while. They opened the Africa Now programme on the Pavli Culture Factory stage. I find this one of the most frustrating venues to get to. It's well out of the main area and there's nothing close by, although this year I was staying 5 minutes walk from it, so I shouldn't really complain. It's a great venue to be fair, a proper music space with a good sized stage. This was an interesting show. The duo entered the stage a little late and took the audience on a journey of sound. Didgeridoo is one of the main instruments here, but not used how you would think. Between the duo, they play a variety of percussive instruments and more, mixed with electronic elements, and it's huge. I'll leave the interview to explain further. The audience viewed the performance in many ways. Some, like myself, stood mesmerised and wondering where the music would take us next. Others sat and meditated in front of the stage. One young boy danced like he had finally found the rhythm of his life, and watching him brought a smile to the faces of us all. Overall, it was fascinating. I would certainly see them live again given the chance. I spoke to Mariam from the duo online before the festival, and this is what she told me about the duo. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, introduce me to your music and what genre you are in under a minute?
We are JATHB. JATHB is an Arabic word that means attraction or the pulling word or the power of the gravity that attracts matters to other things, or in our case, it attracts souls to the divine truth, maybe. We are Tunisian duo. In 2021, we started our duo, and it's a full universe, a mix of my own background and Mohammed's background. Mohammed is into the ambient sound, cinematic sound, dark sound, and electronic also, and analogic, and synthesizers, and all these toys he loves. And I am into all ancient ethnic songs and sounds and vocals. So our universe is a mix or a marriage of all these elements that build JATHB.
What is the influence of the duos? What do you listen to that started this, and what do you listen to now that sort of helps give you a creative spark?
Maybe as I told you, the ancient sounds, the way our people express their feelings to the divine and to their ancestors, to our ancestors and to saints, the traditional sounds, the way they used to express on it since a lot of years. So we are into it, and also all the sound that is surrounding us, life sound, it inspires us also.
Tallinn Music Week. How did you end up playing Tallinn Music Week, and what are you expecting from it?
Tallinn is a very good opportunity for us, and we are so excited to play in Estonia and to the audience of Tallinn Music Week. We applied as I think all artists, and they loved our music, so they invite us, and we are so looking forward to play in Tallinn.
If you could recommend one track from your duo to a new listener as their sort of starting point, what would it be?
Shrif, for example. In fact, I cannot recommend because each track it has a special state or special soul. So you can find some tracks are high tempo, others are down tempo. You can find some meditative, you can find some static. And each track, it's a reflection of the state or the phase when we created that track. I cannot recommend one track, but let me say Yashrif could be a good reflection of all elements in one track.
What is the most rock and roll thing the duo have ever done?
The upcoming album is the way we created, the residency time, and the whole process, and all the things and signs in the path while creating it. Maybe it gives that vibes of rock and roll, and maybe also musically you will find some rock and roll too.
Can you recommend another band from your native country that we should check out?
Ammar, we song with Ammar 808. I love his sound. Is so aligned with my musical philosophy, so I love it. Ammar 808.
Okay, what genre is that?
I think it's electronic, ethnic, maybe ethno-electronic. Yeah, electro folk, for example.
And finally, what is the best way for people to find out more about your music? Is it Instagram or do you have a website? What's the best way?
Yeah, so we are present on Instagram more than other platforms, but we also have TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, all digital platforms, but we are maybe active more on Instagram. And soon we are working on our website. We are cooking for the upcoming album release. It's very soon. And the website will be, inshallah, ready when the album is ready.
Sheebaba, the next band. It's art pop, noise, dark wave, and post-punk. It was the last show I watched on Thursday night, and this was held in Von Krol on a temporary stage in the bar area. There is a bigger performance space in the venue too, but I actually loved this space as I sat up on the balcony watching the band and could see everything that was going on, including the audience reaction, which is one of the things I like most about a gig sometimes. So this is a duo who have an arts background. The large screen behind the performers have visuals running throughout of various thought-provoking events and moments in time, while the pair go hard through a set of mostly upbeat songs. There is a guitar, bass and 2 vocals live, along with so many effects, drum loops and more going on that I couldn't take my eyes off the technical demands of their live show. They also play the only cover I heard during the festival, Early Placebo, which, to be fair, was probably better than the original. The audience were really into this, and there was more crowd interaction than with most acts I've seen at the festival, and the duo enjoyed the banter. Great show, great venue, and they sounded fabulous. I spoke to the duo the day after their set. Can you introduce yourselves and what you do in under a minute?
I'm Julian.
I'm Nina.
And this is Sheebaba. We are making art wave. At least that's what the people say we are doing. We are not really tied to any genre or like deciding to do any genre. We just do what feels natural and creative to us. We are a 2-person band that apparently doesn't sound like it's just 2 people.
So what are your influences as a band?
I'd say, as we are both artists, also apart from making music, it's also these fields. Like, I'm a filmmaker, so we tend to combine everything. Julia is like a
visual artist.
So.
Yeah, I think the project kind of originated in art spaces, so it kind of is like the origin of this more conceptual, performative act that we do. We never really decided on doing a specific genre or like doing a specific thing. It's just kind of the music kind of is a consequence of how we make music together. Guitar and bass and drum machines and stuff. So that kind of like programs the sound that it is in a way. obviously we have influences also of music and stuff.
So I'm talking to you the day after your show. How did you find the show last night? How was the venue? How was the feeling?
The venue was very nice. The people were super nice, super friendly, like the team working there, best people. The venue itself was also super cool. Like the area is very alternative, industrial. And we were playing for the Stupido Records showcase. The other bands that were playing were like Finnish, Estonian rock bands, I'd say, which was very interesting.
We were the last band on the bill, so we were a bit like, maybe people are gonna leave after the main classical rock. But the people that stayed, they were really nice, and I think all of them had a good time.
Yeah, it was a very cool show indeed.
The energy was still there, even though it was after midnight.
So if you could recommend one track that you've made to a new listener, where should they start?
Like for me, it's always Friends.
Yeah. Or the closing track that we played on our first EP.
And it was the first song that we wrote.
Yeah, it's literally the first song that we wrote for the
project. So
we played it at every show, literally.
It's the only song we've always played for this show as a closing song. So I'd say it's the perfect start.
Okay. What is the most rock and roll thing you've ever done?
I can answer that because Nina did it last night. We were just talking about it. Like the concert was over, and there was like the noise still like echoing through the speakers, and I already left the stage. And Nina was like standing on stage, and like people were trying to like reach her hand.
People were coming
from the crowd. They were coming to the stage
shake my hand
to congratulate us. I was already gone, but Nina was still there, like shaking the hand from the stage. Like, well, I want to touch her.
That was very funny.
When people don't know the stage, it feels like it's like a very big rock and roll thing to do. So might as well say that.
Can you recommend another band from your native country that listeners to the podcast should check out?
We have our most famous band, Friends of Delirium.
They've been on KEXP and like on big radio hits. Very young. Jana is an amazing songwriter.
Well, musician. Indie, I don't know how
like indie rock?
Indie rock? Yeah. It's much more than indie rock.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, Friends of Delirium. And then...
I mean, that's the obvious answer.
That's the obvious
But I take something that's a bit more deep-cutty. It's a band called Only Two Sticks. Friends of ours that play like garage rock. It's very noisy, and the vocalist is the most amazing vocalist. Like crazy vocal range and very nice abstract arrangements.
And finally, what is the best way for people to find out more about you and your music?
I guess Instagram. It's at sheebaba.music.
Olev Muska up next. Electronic, folktronica, global and techno. This was actually the first set I saw of the event on the Thursday. It was in the Green Hall, which previously I'd only seen classical events in. It's a large space with some chairs in rows and lots of standing room. Being a solo artist, the stage was sparsely set, just a table with an iPad and a music stand. There was a fairly long introduction by, as I found out later, his manager, who was taking him on a 10-day tour across Estonia after the festival. Then the music began. Olev is an electronic artist, so all of the music was pre-recorded, but he performed vocals in Estonian to music which varied from choir-like backing to more electronic-based sounds. This was not something I would have gone to had I not approached the festival in the way I did, but it was certainly something I enjoyed, and the audience were great. I spoke to Olev the day after his festival set, and he had these responses. Can you introduce yourself and your music in under a minute?
Well, Olev Muska, that's me. I don't believe in nationalities. I just think I'm another person on the planet, and I feel that I've got a right to a good level of freedom, and I know that a lot of people don't. I play with tech intuitively. Folktronica, I suppose, is one way to describe it, but that's not all of it. I mean, I do lots of other stuff too, but currently I'm on that path because opportunity has arisen in Estonia, and that's my background from my parents. I've been involved in the Estonian cultural scene in many different ways, whether it's through the local community, which I don't do anymore, or it's just a personal journey, personal exploration. And the question was asked, are you searching? What are you doing upon your search with the culture? And I said, I don't search. It found me. Estonia found me.
What are your influences as a musician?
Everything. Honestly. They ask, what do you listen to in the airplane coming over 25 hours? I listen to the roar of the engine and the hustle and the bustle and the shuffling, when the foods come around and the clink clink and landing, the little bits, so I try and separate myself from any sort of object-oriented, deterministic way of working, and that's why my music just comes out the way it does. I've tried to have some sort of an aim, but I can only broadly perhaps contextualize it thematically, but that's about as far as it goes. So influences, yeah, and I'm very much involved in the visual side of things too, so there'll always be a crossover between the different disciplines. The visuals will inform the sound and vice versa.
You played last night here in Tallinn. How do you feel it went?
I thought it was good. It was a big hurdle for me to just make sure that the first gig pretty much goes what I set it up to be. And there's a good deal of variability always, even just as we were about to, even before that, I realized my sound card didn't have a separate headphone mix option. And I thought, Jesus, I can't be singing over the top of that noise that I've created. And luckily, my manager, he had his sound card, and we used that. But just before starting the live show, they looked on the iPad to see whether the signal was coming through off the laptop, and only the left channel was coming. And I thought, oh no, his sound card, because it's an old one, may be faulty. But no, it was in their cabling, and they quickly sorted that out. So there are these little anxieties prior, but I've never let that affect me actually, because my instincts and my intuition take over. So standing on stage, piece of cake, I don't have a problem, but what I liked was the little touch that the live show did was in between songs, they'd turn on the house lights, so I could see the audience, and they were all looking happy and enthusiastic. And I thought, wow, that's got to mean that the thing's going all right.
If you had to recommend just one track that you've made to a new listener, what would it be?
There's a couple, but I guess the one with the intro, Rentushka 4, isn't it? It's got that sort of dramatic intensity at the start. So we could say Rentushka 4. Rentushka is an Ingrid Finnish term for some sort of a dance song. And all of these tracks were part of your sort of village dancing and storytelling and stuff. They didn't have titles, so when I happened upon these, which were interpretations by Estonia's composer Veljo Tormis, I've used that as a starting point instead of going all the way back to the original source. And yes, he just names them Rentushka 1, 2, 3, 4, or Chastushka, which is another kind of village party song. They're just couplets. They're just little ditties. I listen out to, I kind of get what they're singing about, and often it's pretty ordinary, but I pick up on some of the emotion. And this one was really about a woman being sad that her boyfriend, even though he's a rascal, but he's been conscripted and he's got to go up to the north where all you have is the bitter cold winds. And she was going to offer to carry his gun for him. And yeah, it's just this sad thing that see you later, and you don't know what's going to happen when you're conscripted. You might come to a bad end. It just reminded me of one of my girlfriends who would do everything for me, to support me. And so just that little spark of emotion, I find, goes a really long way in the way that the piece ends up shaping.
Can you recommend another band from your native Australia that we should check out?
Oh yeah, Tame Impala, of course. And do you know why? Because I hear him quoting stuff and using gear that I would have used. I used to use the echo on my cassette machine, a triple head cassette machine. So I'd run the signal through, and then the playhead is a little bit further back physically, and then you run what played back into the record, and you get this really effervescent kind of a short delay, which can really splash quite strongly if you're allowed to. And so, little techniques and devices like that. So he quotes that earlier stuff so beautifully and incorporates it into his work.
So finally, what is the best way for people to find out more about your music?
Yeah, Insta's a way to go. I think if you do a search, you'll find pictures of me and websites and all kinds of junk up there. It just seems to have spiraled.
So to recap, I have ticked off 4 countries in this episode. Country number 8 is Denmark, number 9 is Tunisia, 10 is Luxembourg, and country number 11 is Australia. Next Friday is the second part of my Tallinn Music Week review, and you'll have to wait to see how many more bands I manage to catch up with at Tallinn Music Week 2026 then.